Greetings, Droogies. Welcome to another episode of In the Abyss. And for the first time in ages, the triumvirate of cunts is back to normal because it's just the three of us. And it hasn't been for fucking weeks, isn't it? Since we were all just sort of here and normal. Well, I wouldn't say normal, but just the three of us. How long has it been? Been a while.
Yeah, probably a month.
Since I returned to these shores.
Nah, it's been longer than a month. It's been longer than a month. We've had interruptions from guests and men with beards and things like that. So, you know, but
I've told you this before. Stop letting the Wolfman come on. He's got no respect. He turned up late the other week.
Every now and then you've got to allow him out. You've got to let him out.
Look,
so
I'm not. I've got nothing against people who are half man, half wolf. Okay, or of wolf and man. But keep the beast at the door. Don't let it in.
anyway, before we get into tonight's sort of major gritty topic, you know, it's highbrow shit this week. Earlier this week, we announced our own little Christmas shindig, I suppose is the way of looking at it. Our first show that we're putting on. We nailed down Celestial Sanctuary, which is fucking amazing because new album's out today. And it is a bit fucking good. I've only had a couple of listens, but so far it is a bit fucking good.
Yeah.
Fucking riffs everywhere. Where they get those riffs from, I don't know. I don't know, but we'll probably talk about that in a couple of weeks. And we've also bagged Allfather as well, you know, friends of the podcast, great band. Really looking forward to seeing them in a tiny little venue. I'm sure they'll absolutely tear it to fucking pieces. And then possibly one more. We'll see what we can kind of add to the bill, but it'll be a good fun night. It's in Chelmsford and Essex, where I live, obviously, because I'm the center of the universe. Yeah, we'll be DJing throughout the night, or the voice of reason will be mostly. And if you're in the area, or if you're not in the area, come down. It's a free show. Maybe a bit of a donation on the door to help the venue because we want to do more of these shows. And yeah, till 2 o'clock in the morning, just come down and fucking bang your head till it falls off. Basically, I think it's going to be a good night. Padre won't be there. Got better places to be, hasn't he?
I'm kind of like, out of the three of us, I'm the Jesuit. Okay, I go out there, I spread the word. I go out beyond these shores. Okay, that's what I bring to this table.
You need to get yourself to Japan because I want to be big in Japan.
I know. I mean, I saw
it's a lifelong ambition.
I saw Tailgunner on Master Aito's metal TV program in Japan.
Yeah, I saw that come up on Instagram. Funnily
which
enough,
is a big deal for them. Like, I think, you know, let's cut to the chase. They need to be on the main stage of Bloodstock next year.
They definitely need to be at Bloodstock. Yeah. And
even if they just open the main stage, just, you know,
as a, you know, in 2021 when Bloodstock came back after COVID, it was nearly an entire British lineup, obviously because people couldn't travel, but it just proves what great British. Well, look, we've talked about it loads of times, and this year in particular, how much great British metal there is. And yeah, Tailgunner are one of them. They should be on that festival, 100%. So yeah, let's hope it happens. I'd like to think it will. Whether it's main stage, whether it's, you know, on the Sophie stage, whatever it may be, but they definitely need to be there, and they'll go down a storm. So tonight, this week, we after their sort of set at Bloodstock a couple of weeks ago, we got to thinking about Megadeth and what's good about Megadeth, what's bad about Megadeth. So we decided, in our wisdom, that we'll rank all 16 Megadeth studio albums from shittest to best. So it's probably fairly predictable where this is going to go to a certain extent, but there are a few questionable decisions in here, which we'll no doubt cross as we go along. Yeah. So look, we all know, you know, Megadeth, Megadave, whatever you want to call them these days. It's a band of hired guns. It's Dave, it's friends, and it has been for quite a long time. Various different members, whatever it may be. But there's obviously a classic era of Megadeth which we all love, and then the rest of it is just kind of, well, let's see. So look, it's going to be fairly obvious where we're going to kick off. It was between two albums, this, and it was actually pretty close with our genius scoring system that we devised for this, and we'll use it again in the future. The worst Megadeth album, according to us, is Super Collider. Came out in 2013. And look, as far as I'm concerned, it's an absolute bag of shit. And clearly the other two agree. So although the Voice of Reason didn't have this as his absolute worst, so floor is yours.
Well, tell you what, I'll explain my decision on the next album. That might make sense, actually, why I've placed it accordingly.
I'll tell you what, let's do it like this. The bottom two albums, you've got Super Collider as last, and we've got Risk as second to last. And I think that was always probably going to be the case because they're both dog shit. But it's why one is worse than the other.
Right. Okay, well, right, full transparency here. And here's the first bit of controversy. So Risk is bottom of my list. And then it's Super Collider. But the reason Risk is bottom of my list is not because I think it's the worst album, because I actually think objectively, for what it is, it's not actually a bad album. I don't think it's a great album. I don't think it's a good album. I just don't think it's a bad album for what it is. But my main problem with it is not a Megadeth album. It is way too bloody removed from what Megadeth fundamentally are. Even considering what they were doing in the 90s, it's too much of a departure. And you've got all sorts of things going on. You've got a bit of light industrial, you've got a bit of hard rock, you've got a bit of country in there. Dave's trying some stuff out. And I would normally say fair play for him for doing that. But it's not a Megadeth album, and he should not have put the Megadeth brand on it. He should have said, you know what, we're taking a break after the other two left. We're doing something, we're going to call it Risk. You might like it, whatever. And I think sometimes it's listenable, sometimes it's not. But I don't want to call it a Megadeth album because it ain't. So for that reason alone, it's bottom of the list. Whereas Super Collider is a Megadeth album, and it's shit.
Can I just chime in on this? I was just looking Risk up on Wikipedia, and there's the critical reception section, and Stephen Wells of NME panned the album, giving it 0 out of 10 score, and saying that the album was the American equivalent of the retro stylings of Travis and Kula Shaker, as well as calling the album corporate mock rock. That's quite biting to compare Megadeth to Travis and Kula Shaker. That's cutting.
Yeah, that's pretty damning. It is. But weirdly, though, the way you describe it is the reason why it's not the worst Megadeth album for me, because he was trying to try something different. I get what you mean. He probably shouldn't have put the Megadeth name on it, but he was trying something different. Lost members, all of that. Whereas Super Collider is just a desperate plea to try and cling on to some kind of career. It is fucking awful. It's one of the worst metal albums I've heard, let alone worst Megadeth album.
Well,
it's for
wannabe sort of radio-friendly choruses, isn't it? I mean, Burn, Baby Burn.
Yeah, not good.
Yes. Thing is, that the first track on that album ain't actually too bad. It starts off all right. And then
Prince of Darkness.
Sorry?
Prince of Darkness.
No. Oh, I've got to do my research. No, Prince of Darkness is a bit further along. Maybe it's a different list on Spotify, but
yeah, track listings do change with digital music, so it's highly possible.
Okay, right. Well, on
I remember we were in the crowd at Reading '99, and on the big screen they were previewing the album, and obviously that would be in the first Megadeth album that had come out since I'd started listening to them in like '97. And I was quite excited, and then I just remember listening to it again. Like this isn't the band that I just got into 3 years ago. So it's like, I mean, it was disappointing.
The thing is, though, with Risk, it was the well, I say it was the first. It went wrong the first time. Super Collider, it went wrong again. Should have learned from Risk. Doing something
that's a good point. This is the thing, though, wasn't it? Was Super Collider made just to see out the remaining deal he had, and he just puts?
I think there was something along those lines. Yeah,
yeah, it was
but
like
that doesn't excuse that level of shit.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, I think again, if you go back to Wikipedia, it says here there's a quote from Mustaine about basically, I mean, the apocryphal story is that Lars Ulrich told him you don't take enough risks, and therefore he went off and made this album and called it Risk.
Yeah.
But what it's saying on Wikipedia is that he was trying to be more flexible and keep Friedman in the band. Friedman wanted to be like kind of more alternative and less thrash, so they slowed it down, slowed it down, slowed it down. And what came out was something that was a product, not just to do something different, but to do something different to keep the band together. But then, and then it says on Wikipedia, "Oh, then I realized I don't need this shit," and they drifted apart, and that's when they all left. Menzer and Friedman left the band. So if that is the case, fair play. You've tried something different in order to keep that lineup together, and it didn't work. But then again, the question is, why didn't it work? And if it didn't work because it was Friedman's influence, then what does that say about Friedman as a songwriter? I mean, as a guitar player, he's phenomenal, but as a songwriter, if that's his influence, doesn't say much, does it?
I'd just like to raise a quick point here before we carry on. You're waving a pen.
Yeah, sorry. I know. I just realised that. Sorry.
You know the rules.
Yeah, I know. Put it down.
No one on this podcast waves a pen. These are your rules that you set out.
I know. I apologise. I will go outside and flagellate myself later.
Flog yourself 1,000 times. Shame on you. Anyway, look, let's leave those two there because they're both shit. We know that, just for very different reasons. Next on the list, then. So we're going into number 14 out of the 16.
What about a ruler that's shaped like a truck? Is that all right?
What the fuck?
I've just printed
but you can only use it on one side. It's got wheels.
I know. It's weird. It's shit, actually. Henry Orchard's and Son of St. Austell. I don't even know who they are.
Well, I remember them from the Pirate FM advert, so there you go. Megadeth albums. Let's do that, shall we? Let's talk Megadeth albums. Yeah. So the most recent one last year, The Sick, the Dead, the Dying. I think we said at the time when this came out, the biggest issue we had with this was it was just too fucking clinical. There was no sort of soul to it whatsoever. It was it felt like this felt like an obligation, this album. More than anything, it was too clean, too pristine. It just lacked any kind of songs. Boring. Yeah.
I think Ben Bean said it sounded very flat, but the drums, it's just, from a drumming perspective, it's just weak.
Yeah.
And it just, you want that underpin there from any kind of, metal album. And it's 57 minutes. It's like, it's one of the longest, and it's bad enough being forgettable and there. Don't be long at the same time, for fuck's sake.
Way too fucking long. I mean, the one track they played, which I can't even remember the name of it, which was the first single, which they played at Bloodstock, actually sounded better live. It had a bit more bite to it, but it was still kind of it's like 6.5 minutes long, and it's just too much. If you're going to do long songs, they've got to be fucking Hangar 18 and Holy Wars and stuff like that for them to carry off. But nah, not good at all. It's Megadeth in the modern era, unfortunately.
It's like you've got in the 80s there are those like second and third tier like thrash bands that technically very good, some good solos here and there, some good riffs here and there. Vocals were just always meh, but like very mediocre. That to me is what modern Megadeth sounds like. Technical, fast paced. Vocals are crap because his voice is gone. Lyrics very subpar.
Yeah.
But you can't fault the musicianship, but it's so technical because it's trying to either prove something or outdo someone or reassert itself. It's like we're Megadeth, we're still here, we can still do this, so let's amp up the technicality.
Are you suggesting that Dave Mustaine is trying to outdo someone? I don't know where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the usual suspects. I'm just talking about in general. So it's like trying to like stay on the perch, and I think maybe to some extent some of the contemporaries have just realised now we don't need this stuff anymore. We just need to tour and play our classics and make our money. It's and have fun doing it and just like reminisce about the old days. But we're not looking to get the Grammy. We're not looking to get the VH1 Video Award or whatever it is. Whereas I think Megadeth were trying to like really with the sick dead and done, maybe trying to reassert themselves. Same with like some of the last 10 years, maybe. I don't know. I mean, can you?
Well, look, I don't know where Megadeth go from here now, because there've been fairly big gaps in between the most recent albums. So whether there's another one in the future, I don't know. But personally, I don't think
shouldn't. They
shouldn't
shouldn't.
bother.
I mean, just even if that the mythical vaunted collaboration, if they ever do it, which I don't think they will, with like him and Hetfield and Ulrich.
Nah, never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. But that would be something. That would be something that would be cool. But again, that would have been cool 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And without wanting to go down the route of lazy comparisons, 72 seasons was quite successful for Metallica. I like it. I really like it. I think it's a great Metallica album. I think it's their strongest since the Black Album. And if you're going to compare the two bands, as we always do, Metallica are fucking
but
way beyond that.
Also, I know, I agree with you. Also, because Hetfield's had his tribulations the last 15 years, he's got something to sing about. But he's also got the influences of Hammett and Ulrich, and I mean, there are good. I think there's a lot to be said about having a cohesive unit that's been together for a long time. They're a band, yeah. That's the thing. They write things together.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that someone, even someone as good as some of the musicians that he's handing through the doors over the last 15 years are going to come in on day one and go, right, Dave, this is how I think we should do it?
Yeah, no chance.
No.
They have to dress a certain way when they're out in public. They're all on a salary. It's like, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's also like, he won't play with anti-Christian bands and things like that anymore. Or, he has done in recent years. He's kind of become, well, we all know what he's like. He's a fucking narcissist, but he's almost become a bit of a parody of himself. And the members that he's brought in, he has brought in some great musicians over the years, some proper fucking quality.
The thing that I really, really made me lose a lot of respect for him or patience with him was when I saw him go on the Alex Jones InfoWars. I was just like, no, like you've built a career of, yes, you've been, you fit the role of the contrarian quite well. You're very outspoken and opinionated, and you've written songs in the past that are very anti-establishment. But this is going too far because he's not anti-establishment. He's out there on a different plane, and I don't think you want to be associated. And it was also like they had a man crush on each other. Like Alex Jones was going on about how big a Megadeth fan he was. And I'm really, you're a Megadeth fan, really? Like, and then he was like, yeah, he was backstage at the show, and it's always nice to come on the show when we're in this part of the world. And he just like, really, I just couldn't get through 10 minutes of it. I'm just like, I just think that kind of thing adds credibility to someone like Alex Jones. Alex Jones doesn't add any credibility to Mustaine. He actually damages him.
Yeah. You're probably right. But look, let's move on, because we're getting into that sort of part of the list here where the worst albums are at the bottom, but it starts to get a little bit forgettable after this, because I found myself over the last couple of weeks when we decided to do this episode of having to go back and re-listen to these albums. Risk, I remembered. The most recent one I remembered. But like 13, which ironically is in 13th position, I had to re-listen to this because I couldn't remember it. And then once I listened to it, I realized this is why, because it's just, there's just nothing there to offer.
It's a completely forgettable album. There's nothing there to get your teeth into, and it's production wise, it's weak. Doesn't have the oomph. Doesn't have anything to sort of grab a hold of. What at all? I mean, Guns, Drugs, and Money is just bad.
Another shocking song title as well.
Yeah, I think. Funnily enough, I think the second half, from what I recall, picks up a bit compared to the first half. I think Wrecker, I mean, lyrics are awful, but it's catchy in a way. But yeah, it's again a long album, 57 minutes. Just
there's no need. There is no need.
It's indulgence, and there's nothing memorable there. So yeah, I mean,
I just remember the last couple of tracks came on, and there was a riff or two here and there that just dragged it up for me into the top 10. But it really is like those a lot of those, even from our album say 14 down to about 8. There's a lot of like, separating the wheat from the chaff kind of thing. Like it's like you could probably take 5 or 6 of those albums that have been made in the last 20 years, and there's a decent album in there if you take the best bits from each album.
Yeah, that's potentially fair. I mean, looking at the way we've scored this, me and the Voice of Reason had this as 14th. This album, Padre, you had it as number 9.
Yeah. Well,
I'm shocked and appalled. I got to be honest.
No, I listened to like 13 Super Collider, Endgame, Dystopia, United Abominations, and I think System has Failed just in a row, right? In one afternoon. And there was some bits and bobs on that album that just, some of the riffs, especially towards the end of the album, they just stuck in my mind. So that's basically it. It's not because I think it's an amazing album or anything. And again, but this is the problem, that the word that I kept coming back to was derivative. It's almost like it's derivative of themselves. It's like a lighter version of a kind of Megadeth. And what I mean lighter, I don't mean in terms of like heaviness. I'm talking about like intensity, vocal intensity, lyrical content, edge. There's no edge to it. There's none of that. There's none of that Mustaine sneer. Yeah, it's just like, it's got no fucking attitude. It's because again, it's overproduced. A lot of their stuff, this is the problem, it's overproduced. Like when we were talking about prog, and in a few months ago, and we were talking about some prog bands, they do it just because they can. Like, let's write a song in C major, just because they can, because they're music graduates. That's what you get from these albums. I think sometimes it's just, you're going to play fast because you can, not because you've got something to say, or because you're going to like, someone listening to it's going to put their head up and go, fuck me, that's good. Or that's, Jesus Christ, that's that riff, that chug, that, it's just too much of a muchness.
As we keep saying on this, if you've got no songs, you've got nothing. You need the hooks, the riffs, the songs. If you haven't got that, it doesn't matter how fucking good you are, how technically able you are. We refer to the band that shall not be named. It's yeah, and Megadeth have kind of fallen into that, but look, that was number 13. Next on the list, number 12 is an album I actually quite like. The World Needs a Hero, which came out in 2001, so it was kind of the reaction to Risk, wasn't it? It was Megadeth went back to being heavy again, or trying to be heavy again, and I do quite like this album. I actually had this at number 8, but you two have got it further down. So what is it about this album that didn't click? I quite enjoy it.
It doesn't feel honest, because I think Dave's still in. I think Dave's.
Is it almost honest?
I think his experiment didn't work. He didn't have that didn't get anywhere, and so he's thinking. It feels like he has to do this again just to sort of get back into things, and maybe there's a similar sort of mentality there that we were talking about with Death Magnetic. But of course, he doesn't really have a proper band.
Death Magnetic is way better.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it's a band.
Massively.
And you have to point out that the reason Megadeth's discography is way worse over with Metallica's is because of that constant revolving door, because it's fundamentally a one-man project. It just had a bit of stability for a few years. Anyway, it just sounds uncertain,
what was
it's just got that sort of, I don't really want to be doing.
What was the name of the drummer on the album?
This would be Jimmy DeGrasso, wasn't it?
That's it, Jimmy DeGrasso
from Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah. Decent drummer, but this album sticks in my mind because it came out, and then just after it came out, it was the same time that they released the VH1 Behind the Music for Megadeth. And I remember that documentary came on VH1 the night before my exam on a second year history exam on the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I remember Rob, our friend of the podcast, yelling into me, "Have you got an exam tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't come in the lounge. You're not going to get any revision done." I'm like, "What are you on about?" I came in. I was like, "All right, VH1 or Megadeth. I'll watch this." and didn't get much done for the rest of the night. So and that's the album that was released around that time. And I just remember the thing about that VH1 documentary is that towards the end, all you fucking hear is Motorpsycho. And I just think there's a Pavlovian response there. And I can't stand that song. I like Return to Hangar 18. That's okay, because me and you again live on this tour. Sort of live on this tour. But apart from the rest of it, no, it doesn't really do it.
This was when the live album and live DVD was released, wasn't it? Rude Awakening.
Rude Awakening,
yeah. Which I
one, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Which wasn't that good either. Not in terms of song, but the quality of.
I think going back 20 years at the time, I remember it being pretty good. I remember Jimmy DeGrasso drum solo on it is fucking incredible. But that is probably the most memorable part, and maybe the guitar tone at the start of Devil's Island. But other than that, yeah, you're probably right.
Al Pitrelli was a bit of a weird choice as well.
Too progressive.
Yeah. No, I mean, Motorpsycho's just turgid biker nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
fair.
you got Dread of a Fugitive Mind. I mean, that's classic Megadeth, and that slightly rescues it slightly, And
that's still in the live set as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Return to Hangar. Yeah, it's certainly competent Megadeth, but it's a rehash. And then you got the closer, When, which is 9 minutes long. I mean, the opening acoustic is basically Call of Cthulhu, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the chorus rips another song off, and I think I was so disgusted I've forgotten which one it was, but it's just a mess for me. Mess.
In Megadeth's defense, at least they've never gone down the route where they did Return to the Hangar 18, and again I remember that struck me as I think you're trying to do what another band that you used to be in have had a habit of doing the last 20 years with that, almost. What are they on now? Four Unforgiven songs?
No, I think we've only had 3, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
There's going to be a 4th one coming at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, but at least Megadeth haven't gone down the route of Hangar 19. Or Hangar 20.
I mean, the only decent trilogy over several albums is the Charlotte the Harlot trilogy.
Yeah, that's a different ball game, completely different ball game. But look, I don't mind this album. Like you said, songs like Dread and Fugitive Mind. It's it's in my top 10 anyway. So
Dread and the Fugitive Mind's a good song title, and that's another thing. Like looking at some of this later stuff, some of the song titles are actually quite good,
but the songs don't back them up.
Yeah. Like didn't it? I just think at some point maybe they sat down and go like, listen, if we play Hangar 18 and then we have a song that's about Hangar 18 as well, that would be really cool to play back to back in a set. I reckon that's probably why they did it.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah. That's Mustaine's arrogance coming through straight away in it. That kind of move. But look, I think it's underrated anyway. So there you go. So we're at number 11 now, running through it. And I remember when this album was coming out, and Padre, you was as well. We were excited about this album because Chris Poland was playing on this. So it was like, fuck, Chris Poland's back in Megadeth. This is going to be like back to the good old days. This is going to sound like Peace Sells. It's, so The System Has Failed, which came out in 2004. And again, I don't actually mind this album, but because the expectations were high with Chris Poland having involvement, I was still a little bit let down by it. Still a bit forgettable.
Kick the Chair's got a very, very good solo in it.
Yeah.
Some very interesting riffs in it, in the album, but not enough. But kind of better than The World Needs a Hero, better than Risk, I think. I mean, a step in the right direction.
I
got it pretty much on a par with The World Needs a Hero. I got that as 8th and 9th for me personally. So,
funny enough, so have I, but mine were a bit lower.
Further down,
just above The World Needs a Hero. Yeah, I think I've got it slightly above because again, I think a couple of the songs are a bit better. Simple as that. It still sounds uncertain, but you've got to remember this is after Dave had come back from his injury, so I think he's playing it a bit safe in terms of what he does on a technical level.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
So I'll give him that. I'll kind of allow that and take what I can from it. But I mean, it's summed up by, for example, The Scorpion. I really like the chorus, but I can't stand the verse. It's just turgid crap. But you've got Tears in a Vial, which again is ballad. It's got that ballad thing going on, and then it sort of blows up later on, and I like that. It's really good. And Kick the Chair's okay, but the interesting one for me is Die Dead Enough, which sounds like his attempt at doing a James Bond theme.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
So
that's in my note.
I don't know. Again, I think on something like Risk that works, but I'm just not sure it's Megadeth-y enough to get away with it. And yeah, the rest of it's just So it's low down for me, but he's coming back. So
my hope was, we're going back over some of these albums, is that I would kind of go, actually, you know what, this isn't that bad, but that hasn't happened.
Well, it's happened occasionally, but too much.
There's a few songs that have jumped out that I've forgotten about, but on the whole, it's not been great. It's not been great. It's used up valuable commute time as well, in the mornings and afternoons, and having to get plow through turgid Megadeth albums. That word's coming up quite a lot.
It really is. Yeah, I think I have to think about that. But yeah, there's a lot of new albums I want to listen to at the moment, and
I would probably say that some of these albums, especially the ones further down the list, they go beyond turgid. They're constipated. It's like there's a big load there somewhere. They just can't get it out.
You can't use words like load when you're referring to Megadeth. It's in the rules, I'm afraid.
No, it's not.
But yeah, look, the next one on the list, we've all kind of got this roughly in the same position. I had it 10th. Voice of Reason's got it in his 9th, and Padre's got it in his 10th as well. This for me was a bit of a return to form. I thought things were going to get better from this point onwards, but that was a little misguided. But 2009's Endgame. I think this is a solid Megadeth album. It sounds like a Megadeth album, and it's probably the one out of this whole era which does sound, for me, like a Megadeth album. The instrumental intro, Dialectic Chaos, that kind of, when I first heard that, I was like, fucking hell, this is Megadeth again. But it does sort of tail off towards the end, and again becomes a little bit forgettable.
Yeah,
you two have got it in the same position, so
this is an interesting one, because I try to give this a bit more attention, because I've seen on the internet and other articles that this is quite high up in the rankings, and I'll be honest, I don't get that level of praise. I think it's a fairly solid Megadeth album as the late one goes, but as we're going to see, it's not my preferred one when it comes to new Megadeth at all. I think it's what I call the embarrassment factor is very minimal, where I think Dave's trying things out that he shouldn't be. So that's good, but I don't think it's got enough there that's really, really making me infuse. It's, I'm nodding along pleasantly enough. I mean, I think the standout's Head Crusher. That's got a bit of a to it. But apart from that, I'm struggling to think of anything truly memorable, but I don't dislike it. So it's kind of, it's in the middle there, but I don't get the praise for it. I really don't.
I think one of the things that struck me, when you get past Risk and World Needs a Hero, most of those albums that come after, I think you've got to look at them with what he was trying to do. It's an entire piece of almost like installation art to some extent, because like there's some songs on those other albums like System Has Failed, United Abominations, Endgame, where you've got like things like news clips inserted in it, and
Dave loves a bit of that these days. Loves it.
Spoken word bits in it, and and the roots of that all go back to, I think, For Closure of a Dream, where you've got George Bush's taxation speech. So, and it's like I kind of get it. I get what you're trying to do, but it doesn't work that much. It doesn't work very well. It's like it gets in the way of the song, and it's like you're trying too hard to be a social commentator, and I don't think you've got that much left to comment on. I don't, you're too far removed, because you've got your house, you've got your cars, you've got your private recording studio, you've got your money in the bank. You're not hungry smack addicts anymore. Living on the fucking edge. No, I'm not saying you have to be an addict to write good music. I'm just saying they're not. Can you honestly still be hungry at that age?
Well, this goes back to my point of these albums feeling like obligations.
I think you can. I mean, like I say, we've said it before, but this year's Overkill album, fuck me, that's
Yeah, it's a fucking ripper.
great
That.
album. They're getting
Yeah,
on. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And I think what's driving a lot of these bands forward is how good new bands are, how much great new music there is out there from new bands. And some bands will just go, oh, no, we'll carry on doing what we're doing. But some other bands will step up their game.
Yeah.
And you're right. Overkill are one of them. That album is that caught me by surprise. That one, and compared to recent Megadeth output, they're just fucking polar opposites. They just show that it can be done.
Like that's the problem with Megadeth. They can't sit down as a collective and go, right, what did we do wrong on the last couple of albums? Because it's not we.
No, that's exactly the problem.
Yeah, it's like it's Mustaine, and if Mustaine cannot take himself away and go, right, what did I do wrong? How did I fuck up? What didn't I do? And also, dear God, just think of the amount of pressure he must put himself under. He's the lead guitar player, the singer, the songwriter, the producer, and a lot of the stuff. Now it's like maybe you're spreading yourself too thin, mate.
Yeah,
that's
a good shout.
He doesn't have a foil anymore. He's fallen out with pretty much everyone he's been in a band with. At some point, maybe he makes up with them sooner or later, but there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't want to go near him again for whatever
but you
reason.
get the impression with Dave Mustaine, whenever he makes up with these people, there's always something lurking in the background. He's never quite forgotten about it. He's never going to let it go. The whole Metallica thing, they've done the big four, they've been on stage together and all this kind of shit, but you just know there's always an underlying thing that's just eating away at him. And it always will be, because that's the kind of person he is. And with some of these albums, it feels like he's trying to outdo himself as well as trying to outdo.
Yeah. Have you seen that film on Netflix, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
No.
Right. I don't know if it's in the book. I am listening to the book at the minute.
Sorry, is that the book? Is that by Mark Manson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read his other book. So
there's the film on Netflix.
Okay.
They actually he specifically spends a good 15 to 20 minutes using Dave Mustaine as an example of why you shouldn't give a fuck. And he basically says that, like, he says this is a very good micro study of someone that really gives too much of a fuck about one thing, and that was always to outdo Metallica.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't matter what he does, it doesn't matter how successful he is, he's always comparing himself. He's giving too much of his attention to what someone else is doing and not enough to what he's doing. And maybe that's the root cause of a lot of these kind of flops. And it's one thing to get those first 5 albums and he was fired up and he had at least he had a foil in Ellefson, and then he was surrounded by some very good guitar players who were hungry themselves. Whereas it's like to me now, it's like these guitar players, they come and they join him, and it's like doing it's like getting into a good university. It's going to enhance your CV for your next thing. It's not like, right, I'm in Megadeth now and this is the next 20 years of my career. It's a short-term thing, but it's like working if I go and work at that company for 2 years, it's going to make my CV look really good and I'm going to get a better job on the other side of it. That's what it feels like with this approach that he's the hired guns thing.
Yeah.
I think it's counterproductive, and it's a shame because he is the kind of creator of his own demise to some extent, and it's almost like a cautionary tale that his entire career, it's like,
I think that pretty much hits the nail on the head. It really does. But
it's interesting, you could argue that certainly all the best Megadeth albums came before Load.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Next up, number 9. So we're well into the top 10 now. This one has caused some polarized opinions. I think is going to be. So the way we scored this is each of us took all 16 albums and we all gave it a score from 1 to 16. 16 being worst. So in 9th place we got Dystopia. I put this at number 11. The Holy Man had this at number 13, but dragging the average up in the rankings is our apparent voice of reason, who's got this at number fucking 4. Number 4. I mean, you've got to explain yourself.
Well, we've listened to a lot of Megadeth albums over the last 10 days, haven't we? And they've all, admittedly, at times, all swamped around with each other. And instantaneously, when I listened to this week, and I'll be honest, transparently, I don't really think I listened to it much back in 2016 when it came out. I wasn't really in a very metal zone then. But when I listened to this recently, for I suppose the first time, instantaneously it stood out head and shoulders above everything else. 50 minutes. I think it's a very straightforward Megadeth album. It keeps things simple. It doesn't try too hard to do anything clever or anything weird melodically. It's keeping things very straightforward and very simple in that regard. It rattles along at a decent pace. And a lot of the time, you know, with Megadeth, where you hear something that's not right and you just think, oh, what are you doing there, Dave? And not once did I hear that during this album. And overall, I think this is Megadeth with Dave going back to basics. I think the production is pretty much solid. It's not too clinical. It's got just a bit of rawness and it's heavy at times. It's got a bit of classic metal going on there. There's some anger there, although I think that's related to when it came out and him going down the wrong route libertarianly, so to speak. But I think musically, I like this. I really like this album. I've re-listened to this album more since, just to make sure my brain wasn't being weird and stupid and whatever. And each time I thought, no,
it was.
I really like this album.
I'm just, wow. It's the second time on this episode I've been shocked and appalled, quite frankly.
I don't get why people don't like it, at least a bit more than it currently is.
Look, Padre, you had it lower in the rankings even than I did. You've got this at number 13, so it's right down there.
Nothing made me stop and go, that's a good riff. There's the Alfred Hitchcock quote about, like, you know, a film needs that refrigerator moment when you go to the fridge, you stop and go, what was that? There's no like stand up moment where you just stop what you're doing and go, yeah, and you start back, you know, nodding your head or tapping your finger or your foot or something. There's none of that. That's why just nothing stands out. This is, and I go back to that word. It just feels derivative.
Yeah, I share that opinion.
Generic.
I'm not going to disagree. I don't think there's anything that's super impressive in terms of riffs and technical stuff, but I don't think it's trying to do that. Like I say, I think it's just bringing things back to basics, keeping the melody simple, and just focusing on just some straightforward metal riffs and good tunes. And I think this does it very well. And I think if you listen to it from that perspective and not from another point of view, I think you can probably enjoy it more. But that's just me.
All right, I'm going to leave that one there because I think it's fucking mental personally. But moving on, and we're getting into the nitty gritty now. We're sort of halfway. So, 1997, when some may argue that it started to go a little bit wrong for Megadeth and everything went a little bit soft, and I don't know, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of Cryptic Writings. As far as a melodic metal album goes, maybe if I was an ardent Megadeth fan in the mid-90s, which I wasn't, I hadn't got that far yet, I might have thought differently. But now I really like it. And I always enjoy Trust live. I think it's a great song live. It was great at Bloodstock. And it's just a really good, solid hard rock album, and I listen to it a lot. It's the one Megadeth album outside of the classics that I still listen to on a regular basis. You two have got this kind of around about number 10, but I think we all got to agree that it's a little bit underrated for what it is. There's some good stuff in this album.
I mean, I would use the example of I was at university with two different people, one of whom I lived with, and they heard Bob and I playing Cryptic Writings, and they went, "Who is this? This is really good." And then we're like, "Oh, it's Megadeth." And they were like, I would never have thought that Megadeth would write a song that good. Risk, sorry, not Risk. Trust.
Trust. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a fantastic song.
I think it's one of Megadeth's strongest songs.
It has got a great intro. It's got an amazing riff. It's got a good middle bit. It's got a good solo. The lyrically it works. It's got a good chorus. It's a very, very good song, and it carries the album. There's other good tracks on that album, but that song as an intro.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It definitely carries the album. It is by far and away the highlight of it. No doubt about that. But I just enjoy it all the way through.
It's up and down for me, but I think it's listenable to a point. So I wouldn't turn it off, but it is up and down. But Trust is great. Almost Honest is good. She-Wolf is a classic.
She-Wolf,
absolutely proper Megadeth. No arguments there. But yeah, again that end where he's trying to be a bit more metal than the rest of the album. Vortex is, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, you could probably lop that off the end of the album and it would have been fine.
Yeah, I mean you got FFF, Scotcho. And it starts off like Motor Breath, doesn't it?
Yeah. A bit like
so
that.
I can listen to it, but it's patchy for me. It is patchy, but I get what you're saying in terms of being listenable compared to others.
Yeah, it is, and like I say, it's that and one of our other sort of, one of the other mid-90s Megadeth albums I do listen to quite a lot. So it's maybe I've just matured. Maybe I've just got more of an appreciation for it now than I would have done when I was a teenager. Perhaps I probably would have written it off, but now it's decent. Right, in 7th place, we're back in the same zone as we were with Dystopia 5 minutes ago. I had this at number 12. Padre is quite up as well at number 7, but this is 5th on the Voice of Reason's list. United Abominations. Explain yourself once again.
I think this is just a proper, decent, solid Megadeth album. Simple as that. There's enough there to enjoy as far as I'm concerned. There's not a great deal of awkward moments. It flows well. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a pleasing Megadeth album. Off the bat, Sleepwalker, that's a great Megadeth track. Washington is Next has got a big old chorus to it.
Yeah, Sleepwalker's decent. Sleepwalker's decent, to be fair.
It just flows well, I think. Simple as that. There's very little I dislike about it. I don't think it's a classic by any means, but it's an enjoyable Megadeth album, I think, and I engage with it more than a couple of the classic ones.
I don't know what to say. Even Padre's lost for words, but then you had it at number 7, so you must enjoy it as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit narrow-minded. Maybe I do need to go over these albums again and again and again. But I do just struggle with a lot of them. I really do.
Let's just say, for me, it was much easier to score the top 6 albums than it was the rest of them.
Well, that's a given. I've also heard the Pope lives in the Vatican. For fuck's sake, it's like it's about as obvious as it gets. But they lost their way. We know that. But that's not to say it was all terrible. We've kind of touched on that. But we're now getting to that point in Megadeth's career where it just kind of afterwards it sort of fell off a cliff. Get to that top 6 now. So we'll go right back to the start then. If we're going to the bottom of the top 6, as it were. Killing Is My Business. We've got this in number 6. I had it at 7. Voice of Reason had it at 7. Padre, this is your 4th best, so it's obviously high up there for you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get. So the first Megadeth album I ever heard was Peace Sells. The second was So Far So Good. Then I heard Rust in Peace, and I didn't get round to listening to Killing Is My Business until actually a few years later when I first started listening to Megadeth. Just because I can never find a copy of it. This is before you could go away and listen to stuff on social media and stuff. So I remember listening to it, and it is just a filthy thrash album, but it's not an album that you would say that is a debut album, because there are parts of it that are very polished, including the songwriting, use of the classical piece at the beginning of Last Rites Love to Death is inspired. The guitar solo, which reminds me of the intro to Blackadder 2, because that's got a really stupid like medieval style guitar solo. The entire song, Looking Down the Cross, it's clever, but it's technical, and it's got good lyric content, and it's like fast paced, multifaceted. The song "Killing is My Business" is one of my favorite songs. Really good lyrics, absolutely just blistering, like fretwork, groovy as well. The cover of These Boots Were Made for Walking, questionable. I get it. Again, clever, but don't know if it worked or not.
No, it didn't.
No.
Chosen Ones, okay. Skull Beneath Your Skin, it's just got that classic Mustaine snarl scream on it.
Yeah.
I just think it's a decent album. And I think it's a statement of intent.
That's quite a good way of looking at it, actually, a statement of intent, because he obviously wanted to lay down a marker, didn't he?
That's a
yeah.
cliche, isn't it? That's an album cliche.
Yeah, but it is accurate, because he was full of hatred and distaste towards Metallica then. So that was what was, it was what was keeping him going.
Yeah, and I've got to say, like the Mechanics, I don't like the actual song, but I fucking love the intro.
Yeah.
And it's really funny, because if you watch Cliff and Wall, I think it's For Whom the Bell Tolls. But if you watch the end of that, they play Hetfield and Hammett play the intro to Mechanics at the end of For Whom the Bell Tolls. And it's just quite interesting, because that's not on the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. Yeah, he's slightly different, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, that kind of stuff must have really got under Mustaine's skin back in the day. Like, really, So I think, if forget the whole Megadeth, which albums are best, all that kind of stuff. If someone said to you as well, what's thrash metal, you're going to give them Rain in Blood. The album I would give them would be Killing Is My Business, because it's dirty thrash, especially just like Last Rites Love to Death. The way the guitar kicks in after the intro, and then the way the solo kicks in halfway through the song. It's just, that's how much methamphetamine you have to be on to write a song that fast.
Do you think, though, if we were around then, if we were hearing Megadeth for the first time when that came out, I mean, this is what I mean by when you get to sort of like cryptic writings, it would have been such a downer if that's where it started and that's where it ended up. Same with Metallica getting to Load and obviously the shit that came after that. I get it. I would love to have been there in that era, hearing all this stuff fresh when you're like 14, 15 years old.
Well, like, can you just imagine going to like the Troubadour or the Whiskey or some of the venues in San Francisco and just seeing that get played live with 1,000 other people in attendance, and just be like, dear God,
Yeah, memorable moments that, obviously we're never going to get. But Voice of Reason, what do you think of Killing Is My Business compared to all the rest? I mean, you've got it kind of at the same level that I had it.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I like songs, I like choruses and big stuff in metal. And when it comes to thrash, it's good, it's really good, but I want it heavier. I don't, I need it a bit more than what it is. And I think, the guitar work's great and there's lots to enjoy, but it's I just want the songs to be a bit more cohesive and memorable than they actually are. That's why it's not as high on my list. But having said that, it's a good album, and
it's flawed. I think is the way I look at it. It's like a hint of what's about to come.
It's a
doesn't quite hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, it's a debut, and but that's it. But it's still a good album to listen to. So yeah. This was my re-listens. I was thinking, do I prefer this to that? It's kind of, that's where I had to have a little bit of a play. But yeah.
All right. All right, so we're going to the top 5 now, so we know what's coming. We're into that sort of classic era of Megadeth now. So number 5, we pretty much all agree on this. We're just about bang on. Countdown to Extinction, 1992. Megadeth Go MTV. It has its knockers, this album, but it has got some fucking great songs on it. It really does. I know it also has Sweating Bullets, but it's got some absolute fucking this album.
I don't like the music in Sweating Bullets. I like the concept of the song. I like some of the lyrics. But I think at that point in time, like, this is Megadeth. He's finally got clean at this point.
Mm.
So he's got that's what that's about. That, you know, and like, you know, that's an indulgence and let him have it. But I do know people who were, like, going back to what you said earlier about who were there in the 80s as Megadeth fans, and Sweating Bullets to them is what turned them off that band.
Yeah. And I can see why.
So I can see where that's coming from. Yeah. But like, for me, the only thing that the main thing that lets that album down is Psychotron. Like, what the like?
Yeah.
This is the stupid thing. If you go away and listen to the remasters, or you look it up online, if you listen to the demo of Psychotron, it's actually better. And if you take the lyrics out and forget that it's about some kind of fucking robot, it's actually, the riffs in it are actually quite good. And I think it would have worked as an instrumental, just as a chuggy, just 2-minute, put it near the end of the album, just riff away and leave it. But no, you have to put the lyrics on and talk about part bionic, not a psycho, call me Psychotron, whatever. The lyrics are just, Dave, what are you doing, mate?
Yeah, just silly.
Yeah.
That may have been when he was still high. Who knows? But
I
think we need to talk about Chug with this album, because, you know, you talk about,
there's a lot on that.
There is. I mean, you talk like the intro to Symphony of Destruction, you know, that sort of little orchestral bit, and then the chug kicks in. And even now, I still love that. When they kicked into that at Bloodstock 2 weeks ago, I was like, this is what I fucking love about Megadeth.
Yeah, and also the solo from that song is great.
Yeah, completely agree.
Skin in My Teeth is fine. It's great as a album opener.
But For Closure of a Dream, and the title track I love as well, which is really melodic, but I love it.
Countdown to Extinction, the song Countdown to Extinction is, again, if it works really well on the album, and it works really well live, and you've got the two guitar players playing off each other, harmony and melody, great. But if you go away and you find the intro to that, the demo of that song, it's even better, because take the lyrics out and it's a different order, and I think it works better, and I quite like listening to it. But yeah, again, it's really good, because it's some of the hooks in that song are, work really well. I quite like the lyrical content as well is great. I think High Speed Dirt lets it down a bit. This Was My Life isn't that great. Ashes in Your Mouth at the end is fantastic.
Great song.
Great riff.
Fucking banger of the song.
Yeah.
Do we think this was Megadeth's hookiest album?
Yeah.
Maybe, possibly.
Maybe what we're going to talk about next, perhaps.
No, I'd say
in there as well, but
this is better than that.
I mean, for me, I look at that. I like the album, plenty to enjoy. You know, like I say, hooks there, some good stuff. It's just, for me, I've never agreed with the acclaim. You know, it's always been regarded as almost a 5 out of 5 album in a lot of places, and I've never understood. I've never thought it was that good.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. No way.
I don't know, but I mean, as part of these re-listens, I've warmed to it a little bit more. But I don't think I warmed to it much more than that. I think there's still a few songs on there, but I think are all right, middling.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, but I think the sound that they took on with Countdown to Extinction, the next album we're going to talk about, the next one, I'm wrong. It's actually higher up than I thought it was. We're actually going to go back a couple. So in 4th position, we've got So Far So Good, So What.
I'm incredulous.
Now, And I'll come to you first because you've actually got this quite a long way down the pecking order. I've got it at fourth where it is. This is Padre's third favourite, but again, I refer to you as the voice of reason. I'm starting to struggle with that term. You've got this as number 8. And I know it's far from a perfect Megadeth album, but I'm shocked you've got it that low.
I have tried, and again I tried this time. I cannot get that along with this album. I really can't. You know, I mean, look, In My Darkest Hour is a classic. We know that, but it's just so much of it just feels, again, uncertain. It's just got that uncertain vibe. And you've got stuff like Mary Jane and Hook in Mouth, which for the most part are good, but they start out just badly. And there's nothing I can get my teeth into. And I think the production is wrong. It's got this 80s arena rock production, which just doesn't feel right for the band at all. It feels like they're trying to be something they're not. And it just doesn't agree with me as well as it does for you by a long way. And I don't think I'm ever going to get into this album.
Look, Padre, you have your say. You know,
I mean, I completely disagree about Hook in Mouth. I think that song is very good. Mary Jane as well was really good. I think
I love Mary Jane. It's a classic.
The way that song builds, and you've got that little bit of a solo at the beginning, and then you've got the blistering ending. Hook in Mouth, that riff that goes all the way through it, and what I love about Hook in Mouth is that is a massive fuck you to Tipper Gore and the PMRC. That's what he wrote it. So again, I get it. Like he's sticking up for the genre there. And you know, directly having a go at fucking Tipper Gore. The song that I don't like on there, which I do find quite funny because of what it's about, because he got pulled over and they found like 12 different substances inside his system. 502 is, you know, the cover of Anarchy in the UK.
I said this
badly timed.
I said this on Twitter. Basically, you've got lyrics on there where he semi-repeats it and he says, you know, is this the IRA? I thought this was the USA, and that means something completely different in America.
Yeah.
IRA. That's a medical. No, not medical. Sorry, that's a pension account or something.
But this is the thing with where Mustaine was at this point. He was a fucking mess. I mean, I think it was around about this time that he did the cover of No More Mr. Nice Guy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the video, they couldn't film him singing and playing at the same time because he couldn't do it. The video was all split screen because he could not fucking sing and play the guitar at the same time. So that kind of gives you an idea of what headspace Mustaine was in this era of Megadeth. He was an absolute fucking shit state. You know,
I mean, this is them playing Donington 88 and Ellefson flying home straight into rehab.
Yeah.
You know,
they were a mess.
They were, and they had a very weird choice as a drummer, Chuck Bowler, and they had Jeff Young, who Mustaine despised because he thought and it's really sad because Jeff Young's a good guitarist. I don't think he was a good pick for Megadeth, but he's a very, very accomplished guitar player. He's also a very good classical guitar player, and he's got a very interesting blog/podcast. And there are a few episodes where he talks about being in Megadeth, but he also, at the end of it, he just says, "Okay, right, I'm done with this," because some of the stuff he says that Mustaine did to him and said to him, and that he's repeated to, and like you said, like there's always something with Mustaine in the background. It's always going to come to the surface, and he can't let anything go. And even after all these years, Jeff Young's name still crops up in interviews, and he's still having a go at him about things. And it's just like, dude, like, what did this guy do to you that was so bad?
Yeah, exactly.
You chose him to play in your band, and then you kicked him out, but you seem to think that he's done you wrong.
But that's Mustaine all over. That's why so many people have such a problem with him.
But that's the thing. This actually, out of all the classic albums, Megadeth albums, this sounds like the one where people are on drugs to me. It just doesn't have that cohesiveness and that certainty. I do see where you're coming from with that point, to be fair.
Yeah, I do too. But Into the Lungs of Hell, Set the World Afire, Mary Jane, So Far So Good. Not so good.
In My Darkest Hour.
In My Darkest Hour, which is a phenomenal piece.
Absolutely.
Hook and Mouth. Those 5 songs are enough on that album, and In My Darkest Hour is good enough on its own, because that is a really good song and it's written about Cliff. So, that's where it gets me. And sentimentally, In My Darkest Hour for me was the first Megadeth song I learned to play on the guitar. So,
yeah. Again, it's another one that's flawed, and whatever state Megadeth were in, it could have been better. But look, top 3, motherfuckers. We are in the top fucking 3, and we were talking about Countdown to Extinction just now. Going forward, number 3, we've got Euthanasia. Now, this is where I think Megadeth hit absolute gold with that 90s sound. They almost got it right on Countdown to Extinction. Euthanasia is massively underrated. I know a lot of people don't rate it as a Megadeth album, which is just plain wrong. It is, look, we've got it as number 3. So that kind of says it all. It is a absolute bona fide fucking classic, this album.
There's not a single bad song on this album.
No, I agree.
The production, for what they were doing at the time, I think they lost that rawness that Countdown to Extinction still had. But I think that works for where they're going, because these songs sound huge.
Yeah, massive.
Absolutely huge. I think I've said this before. I think Dave wanted to do a Black album, didn't he?
Yeah. This is it.
I don't think Countdown was it. It was the wrong time. It was a bit too soon. He was still, This is his Black album, where he's trying to move into that sort of harder rock, big anthemic MTV sort of thing, and not compromise himself. And I think that's where he gets it right here. The choruses are huge, songs are huge. The songs were good, great. Love it.
Some of them are up there as my favorite Megadeth songs. Train of Consequences, the title track, Family Tree, I Thought I Knew It All, Reckoning Day. And look, for as much stick as it gets, even a Toot Le Monde, 2 weeks ago at Bloodstock, that sounded amazing, and it's just such an underrated album.
I'd say so. I used to live with people who like Megadeth, and one song they always trying to play between themselves was The Killing Road.
Yeah.
That opening riff. Well,
Beast of a riff.
It's just, and the thing is, it's the fact that they could do a song like, oh God, this is what I'm talking about. It's Victory, where he's going through the history of Megadeth.
Yeah.
And it's a bit self-indulgent, but it works.
Yeah,
it works.
It does. And I think we have to give a bit of a shout out to the artwork as well. The album artwork is just fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah, that poster was always going to offend. Like if you had that poster in your in university group or something. Yeah, I mean, and you've got the really great poster with the Father Vic Rattlehead dressed up as a priest stroking a newborn child. I mean, that again, it's great. Train of Consequences is a fantastic song. There's some good songs on that. It's just when you get into those 3 or 4 albums that we're going to come up and talk about, and So Far So Good and things like that, I just couldn't put Euthanasia for me over Killing Is My Business or some of those other albums. So I put it at number 6, but that's not to say that it's in any way a bad album nor have I got anything against it. I think when I listen to this album, I always listen to it loud because of the production, how big it sounds. It kind of it does actually send a little bit of a shiver down my spine sometimes. Someone I knew again when I was younger heard me play it, didn't know it was Megadeth, asked who it was, and they didn't like Megadeth, but they liked that album. That says a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty accessible.
One thing I think is relevant to the lack of acclaim that it got at the time, and this is strange when you consider what Pantera did in the same year, but I think 1994, you are still deep in grunge, alternative rock. Thrash metal was pretty much died as a thing. Death metal is doing its thing. That's where the Extremity does, and I think it's very much a case of this was probably just dismissed and disregarded by a lot of people. It's Megadeth. We don't care about it anymore. They're an old thrash metal band. We don't care what they're making. all right, it sounds all right, but we've moved on. We've moved on. Thank you very much. Pantera, obviously, they're heavy. They're fucking heavy, and there's a progressive, metal of the future vibe to them. But yeah, I think that's why it doesn't get the acclaim, because at the time it probably just didn't get the acclaim it should have done.
Mate, I think you hit the nail right on the fucking head with that. Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's just bad timing. Yeah. But look, it's a classic. We all agree with that. But top two. Now, I think if anybody's going to count down Megadeth albums, which I'm sure one or two people have in the past, I'm sure it's happened. I don't think we're the first. We'll have to double check, but I don't think we are. It's always going to come down to these two albums, I think, when you're talking the best two. But the question is which way round have we got it? Now, going across the scores for the three of us, it is very, very close. Two of us have got one in first position, and obviously vice versa. So, but in second place, we've got Peace Sells, just like literally by a hair's breadth. And the reason that I don't put it as number one for me is the second half of the album isn't as strong as the first. The first 5 songs are so fucking good. And Padre, how many times have we said this over the years? In all the years we've known each other, if this was a 5-track EP, it would have been completely untouchable.
Yeah. But
this is your favorite Megadeth album, isn't it? You've got this at number one.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. And I can completely see where people are coming from with the second half of the album. But I mean, I don't think that. Now, at one point, I did go back and forth on that second half of the album. I can appreciate I'm Not Superstitious, the cover. I absolutely love Bad Omens. In fact, I would say it's not the first 5 tracks, it's the first 6. Bad Omens is a great song, and it really showcases just how good a drummer Gar Samuelson was. Yeah, I Ain't Superstitious. It's a bit weird though with Megadeth, isn't it? Because they did this on pretty much all of the first 4 albums. They had to put a cover on that, and it's like, was it always necessary? Was it really necessary? Like, why didn't you just write a 7-album song? Or like, what is it? You got to 7 and you just couldn't think of an 8, so you had to put a cover on there. And if you were going to do a cover, why couldn't you do a cover that was like a classic metal cover? Like, why didn't you just cover a Priest song or a Sabbath song, or maybe something Bread Fan, or like there's other stuff you could have covered. Like I mean, I don't get the Nancy Sinatra cover and Killing Is My Business. Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of kitschy, but it doesn't really work.
You can almost get away with it on a debut album, but when you're 3 albums,
it's 2 or 3 albums in. I mean, thankfully, there's no other songs on, like Rust in Peace.
I actually think this works on this album, but it's just the fact that it is a cover that kind of just brings it down slightly.
It's a clever cover because it's a jazz song, and if you're going to have jazz guitar player and a jazz drummer in your band, then maybe it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like on a second album, at the height, when it comes out in 1986, probably the seminal year of thrash metal.
Just a bit,
Yeah. But that being said, my last words, the end song. Good start. It starts good. Second half of that song is much better. Solo's fantastic. That's my justification for the second half. The first half of the song, first half of the album, you've got, for example, a song like Good Morning Black Friday is just absolutely phenomenal. There are 3 solos on that song. They are different in their own way. The first solo, especially and this is the weird one, because I always thought it was Chris Poland playing that solo, but it wasn't. It's Mustaine. And I think a lot of people forget just how good a lead player Mustaine is.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
And when you listen to that album, like the last solo and the first solo in Wake Up Dead are both Mustaine. The intro solo to The Conjuring is Mustaine. The first and the second solo in Good Morning Black Friday is Mustaine. The first solo in Devil's Island is Mustaine. In fact, I mean, maybe we can put this on a link on Instagram. There is a video on YouTube, and it is just the solos from Peace Sells, and everything else has been taken out. But it tells you who plays which solo. And when you listen to those solos without any backing tracks, you realize also just how fucking good Chris Poland is. And that's another thing. Chris Poland, for me, with Megadeth guitar players, it's either Chris Poland or Marty Friedman.
I don't think there's any argument there.
Yeah. But then you've got the lyrical content, for example, of Devil's Island, which is based on the book Papillon. Good Morning Black Friday, great song. The Conjuring, which is like a basic instruction on how to make a hex on someone. Wake Up There's a great song. Awesome, that seminal riff at the end. And then obviously you've got Peace Sells, which is a fantastic song. Very clever.
Peace Sells, that is my favorite Megadeth song. That's got everything.
Yeah. And then for me, and to this day, it's still like the background on my desktop is the album cover. Yeah. This is fantastic. And but the album Peace Sells, but who's buying? It's a great album title. Its voice is good on it. It's got the style. So it's a close run thing for me to put that above the other album that we're going to talk about. But it's for me, it's just I think if you take those 6 tracks that I've mentioned, kind of compare them to tracks on that other album, the other album almost does it, but there's a couple of tracks on that other album that just by a hair's breadth don't do it for me as much as Peace Sells does.
Can we just talk quickly before we go on to number one? There was a remaster of Peace Sells. Was it in 2004? I think.
Yeah, 2004. A bunch of albums.
And what the fuck were they thinking with that?
Yeah.
Nah. It's the vibe. I've got the album on vinyl. You need to listen to that album on vinyl. That's
the original production is so good. Why fucking remaster it?
That's one of those albums where I'm thinking, you know what, I don't want to buy a repress or this because I'm scared I'll end up with a 2004. Well, I think they did it again in 2012, but even so, I think that might have to be where I have to fork out.
The thing that ruins it. Yeah. The one thing that ruins it is in the remastered version on Peace Sells. There's no pause between when he's singing the chorus. The bass line goes through it. Ruins it. Absolutely ruined.
There was no need, which is something that's so close to a perfect thrash album. There was just absolutely no need to go ruin it.
Is that? I mean, it was released in 2004, but is that what he was doing when his arm was recovering? I think that was around that time.
That would have been around about that kind of time, yeah. But even so, just I know you're bored, but fucking hell, absolutely no need for it.
That's the trouble. I had to choose ones because it's easier for me to listen through Spotify than other formats.
That's irritating when you go and listen to it on streaming. It's that one that it defaults to.
It's the same as Countdown to Extinction, quite frankly. I want to listen to 1992, and even that was remastered slightly, but that's still fairly close. But yeah, I mean, outside of Iron Maiden, I think Devil's Island is probably my favourite galloping metal song.
Yeah,
just how it builds and builds and builds, and yeah, I mean, it's a classic album. It's still very high up on my all-time list generally, but not quite the top.
Yeah, in the context of Megadeth, number one, obviously, because it's the only one we haven't talked about yet, is Rust in Peace. And I was really, really torn between Peace Sells and Rust in Peace. And weirdly, I think I probably listen to Peace Sells more than I do Rust in Peace. But in terms of what Megadeth were as a band at that time, Rust in Peace is where they hit absolute gold. This was peak Megadeth. This is where they hit their absolute peak in terms of songwriting, riffs, solos, lyrical content. They just absolutely fucking nailed it on Rust in Peace.
From beginning to end, this just feels like just a little bit more like a complete package than Peace Sells does.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, but for most of it, it just zips along at a great pace. And it just seems to build up more and more and more. It just, they're not stopping. Yeah, they're still doing interesting things with the tempo and the riffs and whatnot. It's not just, route one all the way.
But it sits in that window of 35 to 44 minutes. It's bang on 40 minutes long. Rust in Peace. And that's part of what nails it, gets it exactly right.
and it's even when you get like Dawn Patrol, the penultimate track, which is just that slow, lumbering kind of,
Yeah.
we're gonna stop for a minute, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, we're surely near the end. Of course, then you get into that groove.
Those last two songs on Rust in Peace is why it's not number one for me. That's why I didn't put it number one.
They're a bit divisive, aren't they? But for me, they work for me.
I know I'm not the biggest fan of Five Magics either. I'm not saying it's a bad song, but
I think that's weird because we were having the same points we were making about Peace Sells. It's that towards the end of the album, those couple of songs that let it down for me, whereas Rust in Peace doesn't. Like I said, this was like a hair's breadth between the two albums in terms of a top two for me. It was really, really hard.
For me, it's a definite Rust in Peace. I love this album so much. I mean, again, the production is just absolutely perfect for it. It's heavy, but it's still raw. But it just doesn't impact on the melody and the riffs and the dynamics of the album across the board. I think it's like in terms of like straight up metal albums, it's my number two of all time. So
it's like Holy Wars. What is there? 6 solos in Holy Wars?
I lose count.
It's just fucking it's mental. And and again, I go back to Bloodstock. My plan was to watch about 20 minutes of Megadeth. Like, I'm done. I've seen this all before. I'm going to go and pack up. But they open with Hangar 18, and straight away, like, you're dragged in. Then, and when I stayed, and I'm glad I did stay, because when they end with Holy Wars, and it just makes you realize just how fucking good Megadeth were when they were at their peak. Just awesome songwriting. It really is. I
still would have loved to have been able to see them in '93 at Milton Keynes Hall with Metallica.
Wolfman was there.
Yeah.
As a fledgling wolf cub. But he was there. It would have been Clash of the Titans for me. That would have been the one for me. And not just because of Megadeth, because of the rest of the lineup. It's just insane. So, but that whole era of Megadeth, that late 80s and into the early 90s, they were just so good. And I think it's almost what makes recent Megadeth feel that much shitter is because they were so good in that peak. Whereas Metallica have kind of done their bit here and there, and the last 3 albums have been strong, but Megadeth have just been kind of all over the place. And the point you both made about them not being a cohesive unit, a proper band, is the biggest reason for that. The chemistry is just not there.
One of the things I love about Rust in Peace, there's the artwork, and there's some of the singles with the B-sides are really good as well. And some of the merch from that album is all good as well. Like the T-shirts that come out, the Holy Wars T-shirt is particularly good. And then obviously there's the Hangar 18 T-shirt, and then there's also the actual album cover T-shirt. But like one of the things that really makes me laugh is it inspired one of my favorite pieces of satirical news from the onion.com. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Like just the title, right? It cracks me up. So this is I'll send. We can maybe put the link up on Instagram or something, or I'll post it on Instagram later. This is August the 3rd, 2015. The Onion Radio News Entertainment. Humanity still producing new art as though Megadeth's Rust in Peace doesn't already exist. Washington, USA, saying that any further endeavors of technical skill and imagination were pointless. Experts at the Smithsonian Institution reportedly questioned Monday why new art was still being produced after the pinnacle of aesthetic and creative potential was reached in 1990 with Megadeth's 4th studio album, Rust in Peace. As the unquestioned apex of the entire history of the creative arts, Rust in Peace is the finest and last necessary piece of human expression. But it's almost as though current so-called artists are completely oblivious to Dave Mustaine's blistering, transcendent guitar work on Hangar 18. It goes on like that. And it's like, it's like a Smithsonian curator of contemporary art, Joanna Marsh, said in an interview, it's not just incredibly disrespectful to keep making art. In many ways, it's actually quite sad. Blah blah
Well,
blah. It's just like right at the end, it's got my favorite bit. Um, the deluded people churning out this worthless garbage just can't seem to reconcile themselves to the fact that their pathetic little sculptures in films and novels and whatnot will always pale in comparison to the brilliantly inspired, heart-stopping tempo shift halfway through Holy War's The Punishment Due.
You know what? A Megadeth fan wrote that.
Yeah,
I think just a little bit, yeah. And look, if that doesn't sum up where we've got to at the end of this episode, nothing will. So I think that's the perfect way to end it. It's yeah. Look, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna go through some other back catalogs because it's been really enjoyable. Well, apart from listening to some of the shit Megadeth albums again, but it's been good fun going over it.
It would be nice if people can like post which bands they want us to do. Because
before that, I think the reactions we want to get is what you as listeners think of our choices and where we've gone wrong, and is anybody else out there going to have United Abominations and Dystopia in their top 5 Megadeth albums? It's like it blows my mind. So we'll reach out on that, but I would love to hear from other people on exactly what they think about some of the lesser classic Megadeth albums and see if anybody actually agrees with your questionable opinion. We'll let you off on this occasion because this is a democracy, despite what some may consider it to be. It is. So yeah. Well, look, that's that for this week. We will be back next week with I'm not sure what, but one thing we certainly need to do, which we forgot last month, is go back over August releases. So today alone, the day we're recording it, has been an absolute cracking day of album releases. So need to get through those.
Last week was a cracker as well. It's just
it's been August has been a really strong month. So we'll I'll look forward to going back over them. And look, even the Holy Man has listened to some of it. So we're making progress.
Oh, Doomsday are amazing. I've been listening to it like solidly for 2 days. Definitely well worth a listen.
Well, there you go. So,
and I do like their cover of Trapped Under Ice.
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty decent, but we'll talk about that in more detail probably either next week or the week after. But we'll see how long it takes us to get through this week's releases first. Fucking hell. So yeah, thanks for listening and stay well. See you next week.